Hello everyone, in this video I'll be ranking the best fighter subclasses in Baldur's Gate 3 on a tier list. Patch 8 brought us the new Arcane Archer fighter, but it also brought a massive buff to the already powerful Eldritch Knight fighter, which we'll be starting off with in this video. The reason it got such a massive buff is because of the addition of Booming Blade, which also triggers their war magic attacks. So you can actually do Booming Blade and then 3 attacks with the bonus action attack. So 4 total attacks in a turn without haste or anything else is absolutely absurd. However, they also got access to the best weapon in the game with Shadow Blade, which is now part of their overall spell list, which is obviously quite powerful. They don't get level 3 spells upcasted to the 3d8 version, but they do get the 2d8, which is still quite a bit considering it can be doubled. Previously, the weapon bond was kind of the major draw for the Eldritch Knight because you could do a throwing style build and have it return to your hand. Now we got the Giant Barbarian, which does that, and the Throw Zerker, which I arguably think does it better than this class. But you can still throw if you want to. I just think that now the kind of meta for this is to use Booming Blade. And I also like to have a mage hand because you can use this to throw health potions. Or if you have a sorcerer on the team, you can throw water bottles because dropping an item is a free action. Now it does get access to the wizard spell list, so you get things like shield being pretty nice of a spell. So this does make the Eldritch Knight quite powerful defensively as well. And you could also grab the Find Familiar spell, which is really nice early on to take the Raven, which can apply blind to targets, which may set up your rogues for their sneak attack. We'll talk about at the end which of the 4 I think end up being the absolute strongest, but the Eldritch Knight makes a massive case now with the changes from patch 8. This is partially due to the war magic at level 7 again. Whenever you cast a cantrip, you can make a weapon attack as a bonus action, so if you start your combat turn off with 1 Booming Blade, then you do your normal 2 attacks, you get a bonus action attack giving you 4 attacks, which is just incredible, the amount of damage that you get from this. But there's also a major benefit too. There are also 3 items in the game that give you the ability to see in darkness, and you can cast darkness from an Eldritch Knight. So I know not everyone loves darkness builds. I still want to talk about it though, because if you're looking to maximize the overall damage that you have, that's a good way to do it. So you can take that and Shadow Blade there. So you both Shadow Blades actually get powered up in darkness, giving you advantage on your attack roll. So you'll always have advantage when you have darkness set up, making you extremely defensive in that regard. But this is one of the biggest changes with patch 8, so I want to highlight it a bit. Another massive benefit is Eldritch Strike, which is kind of misleading. It says it gives the target disadvantage on their next saving throw against a spell. It doesn't always mean a spell, however, and there's actually a really useful way to do this. Let's say you're using the Silver Sword of the Astral Plane here. This gives you the special ability, the Soul Breaker, which can possibly stun the target. So once you have your Eldritch Strike active, you can actually give the target disadvantage on their save against the stun, which is actually insane because stun is the best condition in the game, giving the target just basically skips the target's next turn, which is massive, especially considering this is on a weapon skill itself, which refreshes on a short rest, much like your action surge. So you can oftentimes get that stun off much more frequently than you would with another subclass. So typically you're going to use your weapon bond here just so you can't drop your weapon. Start your combat turn off with Booming Blade. You can even do a Shadow Blade, hold your concentration on darkness. This would end up making it one of the strongest here because, again, Shadow Blade gets that advantage whenever you have darkness set up. I prefer using a greatsword, but hey, that Shadow Blade ability gives you advantage on attack rolls. And what's crazier about that is if you set up darkness, it'll actually give you advantage on your attacks when using a bow as well. So it can get kind of nuts with certain setups. The Steel Watcher helmet can give you the immunity to blindness. There's the Eversight ring and the Shar Spear here. So you can just camp out in your darkness, powering up your Shadow Blade, and then you go ahead and attack. It doesn't wait. It only applies the advantage when you're in combat, but yeah, you can get advantage on all your attacks, which is massive. But my personal preference over Shadow Blade is using the Soul Breaker or the Silver Sword of the Astral Plane. And a little pro tip, you can actually get the Githyanki benefits, so the 1d6 psychic damage, and the advantage on all mental saves. If you first do a Disguise Self, change your character into a Githyanki, equip the weapon, remove the disguise, the benefits persist. So just a little pro tip there. So all in all, I do think that this makes the Eldritch Knight an S tier pick because you can get 4 attacks, which is more than the other attacks. Doesn't require any setup. You got access to the most powerful weapon in the game with Shadow Blade. You got darkness. You can see in it if you got specific items. You got action surge. It's a really powerful subclass, and I think that patch 8 just made it all that much better. And on top of all that, you get the shield spell, so you can protect yourself a little bit better. So defensive, offensive, it really does it all, and it doesn't do anything bad, really. So yeah, this is a very powerful class. And next up is the Arcane Archer. Now, I actually think this one is quite strong as well. It comes with a choice in cantrips here, guidance obviously being one of the best choices, but the arcane shots are the main draw, and it may direct your attention to the Banishing Arrow. This is absurd for level 3 ability. Use Abjuration magic to potentially banish the target to the Feywild for 2 turns. Banishing them just takes them out of the fight altogether. This is crazy useful because you can use this on like a spellcaster, remove them from the fight. Not to mention the changes that Larian made to the Arcane Archer. It previously only was able to use 2 arrows per short rest, which is nuts. This now gives upwards of 10 arrows, so that's really great, combating that major annoyance that it had. So you can spam these arrows as much as you'd like. You do get access to a few of them here at level 1 or level 3, so I'd recommend grabbing the Banishing arrow. I'm also a big fan of the Seeking arrow. This will find the target. It's like Magic Missile. He'll go through walls and things, and it can potentially apply Fairy Fire, which gives this advantage on the next attack for 2 turns, which is really nice. Bursting Arrow can hit targets in a large area of effect. It does an additional 2d6 force. Nothing major, but it's nice to have too. The Beguiling Arrow can charm a target. That's all right. Enfeebling can make it so they do half damage with strength-based weapons. It's okay as well. Grasping Arrow can kind of bind the target. It reduces their movement speed and makes them take damage. Not like an ensnaring shot from a ranger, but it's close. Shadow Arrow, my other favorite, which can blind the target for 2 turns, which is really good. So their next turn, that removes 1 stack, and then their following turn, they get rid of it. And also, the Piercing Arrow. This is a okay choice. I thought this was much better in all actuality. It's not as good as an arrow of many targets. You can sometimes get this attack to do a decent bit of damage, however, but I like to roll with the Seeking Arrow and Banishing Arrow, and then for my third one, sometimes a Bursting Arrow, but if nothing else, then the Shadow Arrow there works well too. So you get 4 arcane arrows per short rest at level 3 here, which is pretty good. You can banish 4 targets potentially. That's really nice. And once you hit level 7, you get the magical arrow, which can make your weapon damage considered to be magical. So it gets, if there's targets that have reductions to non-magical damage, it no longer gets applied to this. So we're going to straight up just do a bit more damage. But you also get the curving shot. When you miss an attack with a ranged weapon attack, you can use a bonus action to attack the next closest target with the same attack. This actually works a little bit weird too, so if you end up missing with something like an Arrow of Ice, you can actually spread the surfaces around a bit more. And another little pro tip, the Drake Throat Glaive. Take this on someone, make sure that your character is holding out their bow, and to make sure that that's happening, you go ahead here, press your arrow attack, just don't attack, cancel out of it. Go back to your character with the Drake Throat Glaive, use their elemental weapon here. I recommend using the cold, apply it onto the weapon, you get a little cool effect here. Now our arrow attacks will deal an additional bit of damage. So you can see that 1d4 of cold damage there, and then go ahead and equip the Snowburst Ring, which will make it so that anytime you attack with cold damage, you create a nice surface. This is a great way to make the Arcane Archer fighter a little bit better, but then you can go ahead with your attacks here. This will create the ice surfaces if you land them. Unfortunately, I was hoping to show off that ability. You had to be in combat to be able to redirect the arrow, but it's going to create a surface all the way around. And you can see there, it actually gets pretty hilarious because whenever you're using creating these surfaces, enemies end up slipping on them. And that's really nice because they go to run, boom, they land theirs. So very, very useful. And you get a higher chance of landing these shots with things like the Seeking Arrow. So very useful. And then you can also go ahead here with some of the piercing shots and then boom, go ahead. And then it'll apply you see there, cold damage on certain targets only. I don't know why it doesn't always apply like that, but yeah, that's really nice. So just a little pro tip to make any archery class a little bit stronger, but it doesn't really need that because the banishing arrows are just so effective. So boom, you go ahead there. We're going to banish Halson. Oh, we're not going to banish Halson. What happens is they're just taken out of combat, so that's extremely effective. He survived the save. They may not, if they survive the save, they may not survive the icy surface that you leave behind. So there we go. We banished Halson. See you later. Goodbye. Yeah, very useful against a lot of fights where you need to remove a specific target. You don't always land the save, but it sometimes does land. This class also uses intelligence similar to the Eldritch Knight, so that's something to keep in mind. And there you go. Halson rematerialized himself. Now, the hard part is, if this was a Ranger subclass and had all the same, let's just say this class was compared to Rangers, it's an S tier class. But the big problem is the Fighter is such a good class. It's an S tier class overall, and it has some other subclasses that are very beneficial. I would have to say that this is a high A tier. I mean, it's the only one in the A tier, but I think that the Eldritch Knight and potentially the Battlemaster bring a bit more bang for their buck. I can't deny the beneficial use of the Banishing Arrow, but that's kind of the main way to play this, and I also showed the Ice Arrow attacks, so those are the 2 main ways to play. I just think that the Arcane Archer does have a really good kit, but not as good as the Eldritch Knight or the Battlemaster. And next we have the Battlemaster. Now, this one brings a lot of benefits, and for a long time, this was considered the best subclass. I'm going to obviously be comparing this heavily to the Eldritch Knight because they both bring a lot of unique perspectives to the way that the fighter should play. And it's not like the Arcane Archer, which you're just going to spam Banishing arrows and your specialty arrows, like arrow many targets. With this class, you get maneuvers. And there's a few really good ones. First being riposte. This is just a very beneficial ability to weaponize your reaction. In Baldur's Gate 3 and D&D as a whole, you have resources. Your health, you got your spell slots for certain classes, you got your action, bonus action, your reaction. Anytime that you can weaponize a reaction, it's a good thing. That's why the Tempest Domain Cleric is such a nice addition, because it gets a reaction attack whenever you get attacked. This is only you can only apply this when the target misses you. But the thing with the fighter is you're going to get a high armor class, so you're harder to hit. So this will expend one of your superiority die. You do an attack that deals an additional 1d8 of damage. A lot of these will, pretty much all of them, add the 1d8 of damage to your attack, which is nice. There's some very beneficial maneuvers here, but riposte is an attack that you can do as a bonus, as a reaction. So very useful, especially if you're going to use the Duelist Prerogative. This allows you to do 2 riposte per turn on defense, which is really nice. Another one I want to give a special mention to is Rally. If you have a teammate that went down, this gives them 8 temporary health points. That's not the main thing though. Healing Word can also bring up and down ally as a bonus action, but the big thing with Rally is you can't counterspell it. So in Honor mode, if you go to bring up your downed ally, you get counterspelled. Now this will no longer be the case. You can rally them back to their feet. It's extremely useful. Now we do have some attacks that are terrible, like Sweeping Attack. This actually only uses your 1d8 damage from the from your superiority die, so it goes up to a 1d10. Terrible option, don't use it. Most of these are decent, like Pushing Attack puts the target back 4.5 meters is nice. I think the Menacing Attack is my personal favorite, because you can frighten a target, giving disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls, and they're unable to move. I also really like to go with the either Disarming Strike, which will make the target potentially drop their weapon, and you can do that as a ranged attack as well. Or the Trip Attack, which can knock the target prone if they're larger or smaller. This can set up your rogues for a sneak attack really well. The other options are okay. Commander Strike's not that bad. Majority of these are okay. This will end up using your action and bonus action to attack with advantage. There's much easier ways to get advantage on your attacks. Goading Attack will make the targets attack you, disadvantage on attacking other creatures. This one doesn't always work the way that we want it to work, unfortunately. So that's something to keep in mind. I think the best ones are Rally, Riposte, Trip Attack, Menacing Attack, and the Disarming Attack. Those are ones that I typically play with, and I find they work well. Now, there's also the Martial Adept feat I just want to quickly mention, because it gives you a superiority die to fuel them, and you get to take 2 passives here. This actually kind of sucks, I'll be honest. Reason why? A whole feat for a single die is not good. You can get those back on a short rest, and you're much better taking many other feats over to Martial Adept. Just want to make a quick mention of this. Level 7 will give you 2 more of these, so you can go ahead with taking the ones that you may not have taken previously. And again, Pushing Attack's also quite nice. They all have minor benefits to each of them. Level 10 is nice because your superiority die and the extra damage, let's say on your riposte, will increase to a 1d10. And you get to take 2 more maneuvers. The Evasive Footwork's also kind of nice because it doesn't use up your action or bonus action to give yourself disadvantage on melee attacks against you, which can be nice. So here's the bait. What is better between the Eldritch Knight or the Battlemaster Fighter? The Battlemaster gets a bit more defensiveness in certain aspects, like the Evasive Footwork here, which you can use per turn, giving you the disadvantage on attacks, where the Eldritch Knight Fighter can increase their armor class by 5 as a reaction with their shield spell. This here gets a better reaction than shield with their riposte. If an attacker misses you, you get to attack them and deal an additional 1d10 of damage, and you also got all these cool abilities here. But in the grand scheme of things, I think that the Eldritch Knight Fighter is better, as it gets you the 4 attacks there if you don't have haste or anything applied, where the Battlemaster only gets 3 attacks, and then technically gets a 4th attack if a target attacks them and misses. The Eldritch Knight also can set up disadvantage on their next spell, put in quotations there, because the stun from the Githyanki weapons count as that, so you can apply a stun really easily. They also get access to the new Shadowblade spell, and they get Darkness. So it's offensive no matter what way you want to cut it. Both classes are great. I think the Battlemaster Fighter is an S tier, but just behind the Eldritch Knight after their massive buff in patch 8. Previously, I would have said that the Battlemaster is better. Now, I think that title belongs to the Eldritch Knight just because they get so much. And the Eldritch Knight also multiclasses decently well. You can add in 6 levels of the Abjuration Wizard and 6 levels of the Eldritch Knight Fighter. This gives you level 4 spells and all the fun abilities that the Abjuration Wizard brings. Whereas the Battlemaster, you typically just go all the way up to level 11. And I'll be honest, I take the Eldritch Knight up all the way up to level 11 too, but it's got more option if you want to spice things up a bit. And just overall, I think the damage output is a lot better. And this is before even considering any of the 5e Fighter Subclass Combine mod by Sumer Dagnoth here. This is a whole completely different thing. I may do a video talking about each one of these and ranking them too, because they're all really fun. My new favorite being the Echo Knight and their other Purple Dragon Knight. However, the champion is the ugly duckling of the Fighter Subclasses in the base game. It gives you, instead of the Eldritch Knight getting Booming Blade, all the fun spells, Battlemaster getting the maneuvers, the Banishing Arrow, the champion just gets a wet fart of a improved critical hit. That, I'm not complaining though, that's a nice ability. It's a 5% roughly increase your overall critical hit chance. This is good for crit fishing, but it doesn't bring that much else. Once you hit level 7, you get the Remarkable Athlete Proficiency. You can add half your proficiency bonus to any strength, dexterity, and constitution checks that you're not proficient in. So that at this point is a 2 to your bonuses. Not that good at all. And it only applies to ones that you're not proficient in. Also, the Remarkable Athlete Jump gives you an increased 3 meters of movement speed on your jump. Nirelna also does as a weapon. That's not that great. But we do get some other okay things. We get an extra fighting style at level 10. That's good too, I guess. Plus 2 monster range attacks, or the great weapon fighting, rerolling your damage die, or extra 2 damage on your attack. But the battlemaster gets a 1d8 or a 1d10 bonus to their attacks. Booming Blade adds a 2d8 of thunder plus a 3d8 if the target moves. So that plus 2 damage from dueling or the plus 2 to range weapon attack rolls, not that good. I honestly think the champion is just a kind of a joke in terms of subclass. For a name as mighty as the champion, it doesn't do much else other than just boost your critical hit chance. You get no cool abilities here. You just go in, bonk, bonk, bonk. I hear people tell me that Booming Blade's boring, but at least Booming Blade's different than just doing a normal main hand weapon attack. So yeah, I think the champion, it's good if you want to do a 3-level dip for the increased 5% critical hit chance and then take all the other crit fishing gear in the game. But if you're going to maximize for power, even just adding in Booming Blade or adding in a riposte from the Battlemaster fighter is better 9 times out of 10, maybe even 10 times out of 10. I don't really love the champion fighter. I've tried in many different builds to make it work as good as the others, and it just doesn't do the same thing. So I'm not even going to put it into the B tier. The extra fighting style and the increased critical hit chance and the 3 meters of jump distance is not as good as even a single banishing arrow, even going with something like riposte and the menacing attack or Eldritch Knight's many abilities. So that's where I stand with the overall tier list. I think the Eldritch Knight, as mentioned, I kind of previously talked about that, is the best for the reasons that I mentioned. You get the Shadow Blade, you get the 4 attacks due to War Magic, the Eldritch Strike applying to things like the Soul Breaker attack, extremely good. Battlemaster Fighter, as always, it's a very solid kit. It's just not as buffed up as now the Eldritch Knight. And the Arcane Archer is really good with the Banishing arrows. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please hit the subscribe button below. I hope you have a great day. And we'll catch you all in the next video.